Now we shall discuss about the chapter 5 popular movements or the popular struggles and movements. When I say the popular struggles and movements, here we are going to discuss on the basis of democracy. I think you all know what is democracy standing for. Democracy is the vision or the most acceptable form of government of the modern present times. So, it is people who are supreme in democracy. So, the interests of the people, the motives of the people, the concerns of the people should be the top priority for the leaders in the modern day. It may be either in democracy or in any other form. But in the present day society or in the present century, when the rulers or the leaders could not take care of their subjects or the people, obviously people started to revolt them. So, this we can discuss in the example of the Nepal incident. Nepal is a country which is located in the northern boundary of India, where it shares boundary with 4 to 5 states of Indian states. Now, historically, India and Nepal share the same Himalayas and have the same cultural values. And moving apart the historical location of Nepal, now Nepal is traditionally having the monarchic type of government, where the king used to be the absolute ruler of any consequences. So, the rule of the king was the ultimate thing. So, as the monarchic style of system started to trouble the people and people started to raise their voices to have a democratic setup in Nepal. So, this kind of confronting moments which happened after 1990s are known as third wave of democracy. The period after 1990s, whichever countries that started to turn towards democracy or to imbibe himself the policy or the system of democratic setup in their structural political system, that is called the third wave setup or the third wave towards democracy. So, now the third wave countries, there are many countries who got democracy after 1990s also. We have an example, South Africa turning to be independent. And now when it comes to Nepal, Nepal was actually ruled by the king called Gyanendra. Before King Gyanendra came to power in 2001, so King Gyanendra became the emperor of Nepal. But before King Gyanendra became the emperor, in 2001, there was a mysterious massacre which happened in the royal family. The mysterious massacre with regards to the royal family. So, the mysterious massacre of the royal family which happened prior to 2001 or during the period of 2001, some of them, there is a lot of conspiracy regarding this. Some people say that King Gyanendra was involved in the massacre. Some people say there was one of the brothers of Gyanendra who got involved in this one and who killed himself also after killing the royal family members. So, there are a lot of issues coming out on this thing, but actually we don't know what actually happened during this particular period of time, but we lost the royal family members because of this massacre which happened there. So, after 2001, the royal massacre which happened there, then King Gyanendra took over the leadership and he started to have a absolute monarchy style of rule. He want to have this kind of rule because he want to centralize everything towards his control, and he started to act towards the steps to build up these kind of things. So when the situations turned like this, and when he started to move on by suspending the prime minister, the first step what he has done is the suspension of prime minister, then dissolving the parliament, so these two major steps. And he also did not agree to turn into a absolute monarchy into a constitutional monarchy. So these kind of steps which made all the people to understand the intentions of Mr. Gyanendra, the royal family king Gyanendra. So when Gyanendra tried to turn Nepal into a truly monarchic style of government where the centralized authority would be with the king, this made the people to rethink how can this be changed. What are the next steps that we need to do in order to change the style of king's administration? Because he started to suspend the prime minister, he started to suspend the parliament, he started to dissolve the parliament. So he started to make his step very clear and put his stand very clearly in front of all the people, saying that he is not going to listen to anybody. He want to turn into an absolute monarch rather than being as a constitutional monarch. So this change has imbibed in them that people should react for this, and people should be firm in their reaction that they don't want any kind of absolute monarch ruling them further. They want to have a constitutional monarch. So how can the constitutional monarchy come in? Who should have the real powers? As I told you before earlier when the lesson was started, that democracy is a modern best form of government of the present century. People love to have democracy. It may be the different types of democracy, but people would like to have the best democratic setup to rule them, where the most powerful person would be the people only, not anybody else in particular like king, queen or somebody else. Even if we have kings also, they are only for namesake or like a ceremonial figures. They do not act absolutely as they are the absolute monarchs or anything else. So these kind of steps made it very clear for all of us that king intentionally want to have the absolute monarchic style, and because of the tragedies which happened, he was aligning himself towards to step up into the exact old monarchic style. Who knows, he may turn towards into a dictator or a tyrant. So this kind of all doubts and confusions and the clarities which are given by the king's steps made the people to react. So as a king decided to have the measures to make clear that he is going towards the absolute monarchic style. So he started to suspend the prime minister, the parliament in 2005. In 2005 Feb, he started to do this kind of actions which raised the angers of the people, and finally that emerged into a larger protest. So the protest started to happen from April 2006 into a very severe stage. It was the first time ever since the Nepal formation or the independence of Nepal happened that they can see a larger gathering of the people coming outside of the houses and staging the protests. Initially the population or the number of people who turned out was more than 1 lakh in the initial days. So then the security personals who were started to enforce curfew and started to pressurize the people not to come outside of the houses, but security forces literally failed to get the control over the people because they are in lakhs in number. So these numbers started to grow up from 1 lakh to 3 lakh and then to 5 lakh. So as the number started to grow out completely into a larger scale, and finally they decided that we cannot do anything, and the entire curfew which was kept by the king's order was being completely defied by the people. People did not bother about the king's order at all because they want to have their own say. They want to have the democratic setup and the democratic structure. So finally they decided to have this structure and setup and decided to go ahead against the king's rule. So with this, the security forces could not do anything, and finally they started to give an ultimatum for the king of 4-day ultimatum saying that king has to react and should reinforce the parliament back, should turn into a constitutional monarch, and completely become king's favor towards the parliament. Parliament has to be reinforced, and they also decided to have that a new constituent assembly in order to reframe the constitution or to frame a new constitution for the newly democratic Nepal. So these were the requirements of the people. These were the deadline given by them. Then who did the people give deadline to the king? All the political parties together. There are nearly 7 political parties in Nepal. So all the political parties together formed as an SPA, 7 party alliance. SPA stands for 7 party alliance, and these all people gathered together and started to showcase their protest against the king's intentions and the actions. Finally, on 21st of April 2006, the king was forced to sign the agreement concluding that he would reinstitute the parliament he would give power to political parties third one, a new constituent assembly would be formed here, and finally they decided that they would go ahead if these 3 are reinforced again. King was forced to sign the documents, and king agreed to become from an absolute monarch to the constitutional monarch. Parliament will be reinforced, power would be given to political parties to contest in the elections, and the constituent assembly has to be framed. A new constituent assembly has to come in to frame the new constitution for the democratic Nepal. So these all consequences made it very clear that wherever people have the intention to fight against the injustice, there it has proven right. So the struggle of Nepal people towards the democratic structure of the governments existing against the absolute monarchy made it very clear for all the other countries who are fighting for democracy, and it also became an inspirational issue for all of them, because people till yesterday they were under the control of a king. King started to pressurize all the people and dismiss all the constitutional bodies and the people's representative institutions, which made the people to get anger, and they moved out of their houses and staged their protest on the streets, and finally king was forced to accept whatever the people demanded without any condition. And people also made it very clear that we don't want any half-hearted concessions. We want a complete and a clear picture and clarity on what we need of the issue. So they always demanded a parliament would be the supreme, king would be the nominal king and or a constitutional monarch, but the authority should be vested only and only with the people and not with anybody else. So this turnout made it very clear for all the other countries who are fighting for democracy an inspiration, and it also proved that people will be always successful when they are fighting against any major rule. The role of the people in the modern day has been a large and crucial in any moment. So this is how Nepal turned from the absolute monarchic type of ruling governance to a complete democratic setup. Today we have a parliamentary system. A new interim government was elected by the people, where Girija Prasad Koirala was the head of the nation and like the prime minister. And then we have a new constituent assembly in process of framing the constitution for the newly formed democratic Nepal, and they also made it very clear the powers of the kings are completely being reduced and the powers of the parliament are being exposed to a very high height, that it is parliament is supreme than the king. So this has been an inspiration for the modern 21st century, all the countries which are fighting for democratic structure and setup or governance. So the Nepal's restoring of democracy is a successful concept of people's struggles, but this itself is not an end for a struggle or people's intentions in democracy. The new concept are like whenever people face any problem, they would restore or fight against the government and get their work done. That is also a part and parcel of democracy. Let us have an example of this issue when we talk about the Bolivia. Bolivia is a country which is located in the southwest region of South Africa. So Bolivia is one of the developing nations in Latin America. So when we talk about the Latin American countries, where we have the influence of rapid industrialization, and World Bank pressurized the Bolivian government to give away certain rights of a city on water management towards a private company, so that they would be able to repay back the loan amount. So in order to understand the sequence clearly, let us discuss about Bolivia's water wars. Water war in Bolivia. This happened at the city called Cochabamba. So city of Cochabamba is being supplied water by the Bolivian government at the considerable rates. As the time passed on and with the pressure of the World Bank, so the World Bank pressurized the Bolivian government to give away the rights or the water management of the city of Cochabamba to a multinational company called MNC. So the MNC, as soon as it got the powers on the administration of Cochabamba water department, it decided to increase the cost of water, or what we also call it as the municipality tax, municipality water tax, from 1000 rupees to 5. Initially they used to get in hundreds, but it was raised to 1000 rupees, where the average income of a person in the city was 5000 rupees. So nearly 25% of the incomes of the people are only and exclusively kept to pay the water tax. This raised the anger of the people. Here we don't have any political group coming together at all to address the issue. The people themselves started the agitation, and they started to make the agitation very large and clear, which made the people of Bolivia to think it, and the government promised in Feb 2001 that Bolivia will take care of the issue and the government would try to reconsider the taxation process and it would look after the issue very seriously. But the issue failed. In Feb, the promise war went into vain, and again the people started to agitate in April to fight against the atrocities which are happening on the name of the water bill. So when the people started to raise their voices again second time, police started to punish the people brutally and started to pressurize the people to accept the decision taken by the government, and there should not be any concerns raised against that. But people came out very seriously, very strongly, and started to do a 4-day strike. On this issue and made it their stand very clear that it should be reconsidered, and otherwise we would have to take into violent steps. And this 4-day strike pressurized the company workers to flew away from the city. So this action made the people to understand that people were always powerful even than the government, though the government may have certain political powers, but the real people are the true power and the powerhouses of the modern democracies. So the people, the company workers have flew away from there, and the government has reduced or cancelled the order of giving that authority to the private company, and government itself has taken over the entire thing and managed to get the issue at very soft level, which means like their intentions were very clear. They want the water tax to be at the manageable level where they can pay the tax out of their entire income. 1/4 if they started to pay only for water tax, what about the other issues? That was a major concern where it is going beyond their limit. So they could not be able to pay anything and could not lead their lives properly, because the average salary what they get in this area was just only 5,000 rupees. So now when we take the issue of the Bolivian water war, the country where it is still a developing country and where it is located in the southwestern part, and the small city of Cochabamba, where the government has been pressurizing the people to pay more amount as taxes, the people started to fight back by raising their voices, doing the strikes, and all these agitations made it very clear that people, when they started to raise their voice would be very loud and clear. And in modern day democracy, the real power lies with the people. So people are the powerhouses of modern day democratic structure. It is very clear for us from the Nepal incident and the Bolivian war incident. So what are the steps that we can jot it down from the two experiences that we have? So when we discuss about democracy and the popular struggles, how is democracy connected to the popular struggles? So the democracy and popular struggles is nothing but when the expansion or any major decisions are taken in democracy that involves a larger section of people. So when the larger section of people are involved in the democratic setup or changes, let us take for example Nepal moving from the monarchic style to democracy and again getting back the reinforcement of monarchy and again fighting for restoration of democracy there. Here the conflict involves a larger sections of people. So the conflict arises between the people who have power, people who would like to have power, to people who share power or who experience the power. So the conflict comes between these two people. So in the democracy, in the most of the times when there are any major changes or any kind of restorations happening, we have popular struggles or movements which will ultimately result in structuring of the democratic setup. That was the first major initiative step which happens in the popular struggles for us. And when it comes to the second major issue of conflict resolution in democracy, the conflicts, most of the times conflicts are getting solutions from any of the institutions like from legislature, the executive or the judiciary. In case if the institutions are itself in the contradictory views or found in the contradiction or involved in the issues, then the people from outside would like to take certain new things and would like to get the solution for the issue. So these kind of outturns of the issues and this kind of modern changes are also frequent in democracy. Here the point is, when there is a transition happening, we have the conflicts and the popular struggles in democracy, and when the struggles are happening, we try to get the solution in between the conflicts either by the institutional bodies in democracy or from the outside, from the public voluntarily, but the solution can be grabbed out from the mass mobilization. And the third point is public role in the protests. Nowadays, if you discuss on any issue, you get a political party struck to any of the concepts. You talk about the democratic restoration in Nepal, you have the political parties group coming together and giving an ultimatum to the King Jnanendra. But if all the political parties get involved or not, or either of the political parties get involved, but the problem or the issue is that whether the people would react for that or not. Unless and until people react for the thing, the issue would not become very serious. Yes, because of political parties getting involved or reacting spontaneously towards the issue, which may create some kind of attention towards the people to react how it was, but unless and until people would come and participate voluntarily, any political party could not run any protest or movement without the support of the people. So the mass mobilization or the people mass people in larger number would turn out in the support of the political parties would automatically lead to the success of the movements in almost all the consequences or on the scenes or all the scenarios which have happened in regards where the public support is being on the larger scale. All the movements which are initiated by the political parties have seen their success. So here we need to understand very clearly that the role of people in the modern day democracy is very crucial and the ultimate. If people are not satisfied with any of the concerns or any of the issues of the government, they can raise their voice. What we have seen the example of the Bolivian war, water war, actually in clear clarity that people are worried about the billing of the water of the Cochabamba city in Bolivia, which made the company workers to run away from their government to rethink and re-establish the government control over the natural resources of the Cochabamba region or the water actually in specific. So now when it comes to the people's reactions, people would react actively. Yes, we have the role played by the institutions, we have active role played by the political parties, where the political parties react spontaneously and try to find out some possible solutions as soon as possible. But until and unless people would not turn out in a larger numbers, the movements would not be successful. So it's not only with the political parties. When we discuss about the democratic restoration in Nepal, we have seen the role of the political parties being very active. But when it comes to the issue of Bolivian water war, where people themselves have initiated the issue, where no political party was not far away from the scene. So when it comes to this issue, people are the key instruments or key motivators of themselves. Yes, political parties would add a flavor for that or get a structurized output for that. They would plan a systematic procedure of how to protest the issue, but at the same time, people participation is very much in large required. And also, not only the political parties, but pressure groups. The pressure groups play a very vital role, and also the movement issues. Unions, political parties, pressure groups and unions would try to turn the issues into the movements. So in democracy, always we have challenges towards the modern democracy, whether the democracy just having a structure of democracy and having a parliamentary setup would not end up saying it have a true democracy. The true democracy is something where people would always react for the issues, and democracy has to accommodate them and try to pacify the people who are in trouble. When the people are pacified properly and structured very well, the issues would get sorted out. If not, again it would turn into a chaos and the situations are becoming violent in some of the extreme cases. But as per the examples what we have seen, even in Nepal or in the Bolivian water war issue, we can understand it very clearly that political parties' involvement is also required, but at the same time, it is not mandatory. Without the political parties getting involved also, there are certain issues which have been sorted out and government have come down and solved the issues. Now, as we discussed about the movements which happened in Nepal, the protest, the fight back for the restoration of democracy, in the same way, we also discussed about the Bolivian water war issue. Now, when we observe these two incidents very carefully, we come to get the idea of mobilization of people. So who really or actually mobilized the people for both the movements? Yes, both are different cases, but in actual consideration, let us find out in detail like how is the mobilization happening the process and how would be influenced by the political parties or not. So now mobilization and organization. So the mobilization and organization stands here means somebody has organized to mobilize the people to make the issue in a larger scale. So when I talk like mobilizing the issue towards a larger scale means the incident of restoration of democracy got the attention of lakhs of people. So how did the lakhs of people turn up? Who took the leadership of this one? Who motivated the people? Who brought the awareness to the people in gathering them together at a particular place and making it to be a very larger one? These all, if you study carefully, then you can understand what is the meaning or importance of studying about mobilization and organization. So, when I talk about the incident which happened in Nepal, as you all know, in Nepal, the people fought for restoration of democracy. So when the restoration of democracy was to be installed, when democracy has to be reinstalled in the nation, the party which took the leadership was not a single party, it was a 7-party alliance. The 7-party alliance was known as SPA. So under the leadership of SPA, the all people of Nepal gathered together to protest the actions of the king or the steps taken by the king to prevent from Nepal falling down into absolute monarchy and to restore it back to the old form of constitutional monarch and making it as a democratic setup structure in Nepal. But does all the political parties came together for this one? Do we don't have any differences in the political parties? Yes, we have a difference of in the 7 political parties we have one more party, that is Nepal Communist Party, who are influenced by the principles of Maoist ideas or Mao's principles. So in China we have a famous leader called Mao. So according to his ideas and the ideologies, the party was inspired and they took up a new political party in Nepal who do not believe in democracy in the initial years. But as the time passed on, they realized, yes, we all need to be together and fight against the common enemy and then fight for our necessary requirements within the constitutional limits. So after a year together, all the communists also joined together into the alliance and fought against the king. So finally, the king was forced to leave his absolute monarchicship and to reinstall the democratic institutions in the country of Nepal, and was also asked to have a new constituent assembly, to have a new constitution where the powers of the kings are being completely reduced and made as a constitutional monarch. And they also decided to have a clear structure of setup of rules which will not make any other further ruler to turn into a absolute monarch. So after all these things, we can understand it very clearly that in this structure of gathering the people, it would be right to say that the people were explained clearly of what is the scenario if the situations turn against them. What would be their future if they don't respond now? So this kind of motivation was initially given by political parties. In Nepal. So, can we conclude that the political parties always do play a major role and not the other sections of people or not the other communities of the people? It would be completely wrong. It's not the only political parties have gathered the people, have motivated the people, have brought awareness to the people. The people who are like teachers, doctors, students, elite group, all these people have decided that we also need to react for this one. So at every corner there was a positive response towards the movement. This made the movement to be a very large movement. But it is not compulsory always to have the leadership of political parties in order to have a movement of mobilization or the organization structure. Let us take the example of Bolivia. In Bolivia, we have seen water war. The water war happened at the city called Cochabamba. In the city of Cochabamba, here also we have the teachers, the doctors, the students and the allied group and also the homeless people. This is an additional people who gathered here are homeless people. Let us call them as poor people who cannot afford to pay to buy water. So all these people have gathered or like know practically the situation, what would be their practical life if they are ready to accept this kind of changes. And next we also have a group called FEDECOR. This group of FEDECOR took the leadership or the initiation to motivate the people in regards to the issue of Bolivian water war in Cochabamba. So as the issue went on further, people gathered, made the people, the representatives of the companies to run away from there, forced the government to react for the situation and change the laws to the old status rather than to the new billing system. So these all steps conclude for us that in one case we have seen political parties taking the larger share in the moment, while in the other case the people themselves have taken the major role to play just under a small organization called FEDECOR. But as the time passed on, in 2006, year 2006, the FEDECOR organization started to get established as the Socialist Party. Socialist Party of Bolivia, which forced them to turn towards politics, or let us say that the leaders who were able to motivate the people in the moment of Bolivian water war from the organization of FEDECOR were able to convince the people and turn into a major political party in Bolivia. So this kind of changes sometimes may occur, sometimes may not occur. But the ultimate point, what we need to remember here is that it's not only the political parties, it's not only the elite community, it's not only the students, it's not only the teachers. There are certain other features which make the people to participate actively and inactively. For example, some people would like to participate actively in the politics, in the movements, and would like to showcase their interest towards the nation. Those people are called active people. But the other time, we have some other groups of people in the society who are busy in their regular day-to-day works and would like to contribute through inactive ways. So active people would like to come outside, do the dharnas or the movements on the stages or on the streets. But the inactive people would like to pass on the information to larger sections of people but would not get directly involved in the momentum of that particular movement. So these all changes would finally conclude them or get to the concluding point that we have certain interest groups or the pressure groups. So the interest groups or the pressure groups would definitely play a major role. So what groups are called as interest groups? What groups are called as pressure groups? The pressure groups or the interest groups. As we discussed just now, what are the pressure groups? What are the interest groups? The pressure groups and the interest groups. So when we talk about the pressure groups and the interest groups, let us try to understand first of all what is a pressure group, what are the movements that come under the category of pressure groups. Then we shall move on to the interest groups. What are the movements that come under the interest groups? Let us take what is a pressure group. A pressure group and movements are interlinked. The pressure group is a group of people who would like to influence the government or the government politics through its movements. So, because of pressure groups, there would be some kind of pressure on the government politics, but at the same time, the pressure groups do not like to share directly in the political power. Are you getting my point? Pressure groups would try to put some pressure on the government politics or policies. At the same time, do not share the political power directly. Do not share the political power directly. Sir, how is it difficult or different when it compares to directly when you are influencing the policies? See, when I say that they do not interfere directly in the political power, they don't wake up their voices until and unless there is a problem which is being shooting up in the politics. So the government politics are the things which are done by the party which comes to power with certain norms, rules and regulations according to the constitutional guidelines. But when it comes to the pressure groups, they do not have any guidelines, they do not have any issues, or they do not have any constraint measures. They just take up an issue and fight for that issue. The examples for these kind of things are, one is the Narmada Bachao Andolan. Let us take the second one when we talk about the movement for Right to Information Act. Then we can also discuss about the movement which happened in AP, that is anti-liquor movement. And we can also say the women movements which happened at various corners. Also come under the categories of pressure groups. So a pressure group is not any political party's wing or side or anything else. The pressure group do not share any political power at any time, but it would pressurize the government politics or the policies to be modified according to the interests or the situational demand of a particular movement. But at the same time, these are not having any certain guidelines. These are flexible, and in the larger part it needs the dependence of the mass population support. When I say here mass population support, it is not representing any particular section of people of mass, but it's representing here a larger proportion of people. So the pressure groups would try to pressurize the government in its policy matters or any of the issues or the moments what they take up, but they do not like to share the political power directly. At the same time, we can have some examples like the Narmada Bachao Andolan, the movement for RTI Act, the anti-liquor movement, or the women's movements whichever are coming up right now. At the same time, we don't have any set of guidelines to be followed to a pressure group, but they are very flexible when compared to the interest groups, and they also depend on the rapid population or the instantaneous or spontaneity of the mass coming out of the people and participating in the movement, which would turn out into a very large movement. So this is about the pressure groups. So when we discussed about the pressure groups, we have the other group division, that is the interest groups. The interest groups are again further redivided into section groups or public interest groups. So the section groups are the public interest groups. When I talk about the section groups, let us take the examples like trade unions, businessmen, or let us take lawyers, doctors, or any other categories of people like teachers. So in the section group, the trade unions, businessmen, lawyers, doctors, teachers, these all are different sections of community who live together. But when I talk about the section group, like trade unions try to do benefit for the people, those are the members of the trade union, businessmen, whoever is doing business, lawyers, the lawyer practicing profession community people, whoever practices the law as their profession, doctors who do the medical practice work, the teachers who do teaching. So all these are different sections of the same society. So when I talk about the section groups are the people or the group that represents to a particular section of people and would try to fight for that benefits of that particular section of people. Let us take, when we discuss about the sectional groups, the benefits which are given for doctors. The junior doctors would like to do strikes whenever they don't get the benefits. These junior doctor strikes are going to get benefits only for that particular sections of the doctors community. So we can conclude the section groups definition like it is only for that particular section of people for whom the struggle was made, and these moments would make it very clear the benefits for only that particular categories of people. So the sectional group takes the benefit of their own sections of people. It is concerned for only that particular category of people. When it comes to the public interest groups, it is concerned for the well-being of all the members of the society. All the members of the society. So when I say all the members of the society, the public interest movements want collectively benefits for all people in the society. When I talked about the section groups, they want only for that particular section people. But when I talked about the public interest groups, they want the changes to be benefited to all people. Let us take the moment of Nepal's reinstallation of democracy. The reinstallation of democracy, in that moment, the human rights members who also were participating in that. Actually, the members who are participating may not get any direct benefits from that. from that particular moment, or because of changes which are coming after that particular moment. But as the time passed on, all the members of society would get the benefits. That would be the motto of the people, those who are doing the public interest groups movements. Let us take the example of Bolivian water war, where the FEDECOR group members are very few, but the students, the university members, all have participated in the movement to bring a change in the system which would rather benefit for a larger section of people in the society. So, the public interest group always tries to get benefit for larger sections of people, while the section group always tries to get benefit for only that particular sections of people. When we talk about the bonded labor, let us take an example for public interest groups. The bonded labor concept, when you take, the people those who are fighting against the bonded labor may not be actually the victims of bonded labor, but they want a certain changes in the society and the pattern of the society existing that time, so that benefits would benefit for larger sections of people. And at the same time, when we talk about the backward employees federations, which are fighting for against the discrimination which is happening for them in a sectional, it can also be a sectional group, because it always tries to get benefit for only the backward section people here. But in actual terms, they are fighting against the social injustice which is happening for them on the name of the caste. So here, in this way, they are going to get benefit for the entire community of people who are suffering from the discrimination or social injustice to them. So in this way, it is very clear for us, we have three categories of pressure groups. One is the main pressure group which will influence the government policies, but do not take any share in the government directly, and also have the Narmada Bachao Andolan are the movements or the examples of this. When it comes to the interest groups, they are again categorized into two. One is the sectional group, the other one is the public interest groups. When I talk about the sectional groups, the sectional group members are the members which would try to get benefit for their own members in the society, their own members in the community, their own caste members, their own community members, their own religious members, their own professional members. All these things are that particular section people only. When I talk about the public interest groups, it is concerned for the well-being of all the members of the society. Initially, it may be started by a member who may not be affected by anything of that particular issue or the incident, but later on, he wants the benefits to get to the larger sections of the community. This public interest groups works with the concept of collective benefits for all members of society, where sectional group works only for concerned members of their own section. So this is a broad categorization of the pressure groups and the interest groups. So how do the movements develop now? So as we discuss the different categories of sections of people, like the section group, pressure groups, or the public interest groups, when we talk about the movements, the movements or the movement groups are most of the time, if you observe, like they have some certain specific things. Let us take, like they are most of the times specific issue based. When I talk about the specific issue based, let me take for an example like Narmada Bachao Andolan. The Narmada Bachao Andolan was initially made to fight against the construction of the dam in a larger scale like Sardar Sarovar Dam. This Sardar Sarovar Dam, they were not against the construction of Sardar Sarovar Dam, but the compensation paid for the farmers who lost their fields or lands because of the construction of this dam was a big question mark there. So what is the justice that is going to be done to the people, those who are going to lose their ground, or they are going to lose their lands, or they are going to lose their fields? What are the major benefits that are going to be done here, or in order to compensate them? So this is a issue, specific issue based movement. Later on, we also have a very less time bound of the movement. Once the dam was kept in hold, the construction was blocked, automatically the movement would end. The question is here, most of the movements whichever are on issue specific would have very less time constraint, and they most of the times they try to do on that particular issue only. When we take about the other side of the same movement, for example, if you take the same Narmada Bachao Andolan movement, which turned into an environmental movement where there are hundreds and thousands of organizations which fight on the name of the environmental protection. So in order to protect the environment, they are fighting. Here also they are issue specific. Their issue is they want the environment to be clean, clear and survival for the benefit of the best. But the time bound is not there. They were continuously fighting for hundreds of years, like for tens of years, a decade, the time passes off. And you don't have a particular leadership to fight against anything. When we discussed about the Narmada Bachao Andolan, initially it was against the construction of the dam in regards to the compensations which are paid. But later on, the movement went on to a very larger scale, questioning the actual construction of the big dams in the entire India. So at the cost of the poor people's land, the dams were constructed. This gave a larger picture of Narmada Bachao Andolan, which also had the spices added like the environmental protection also. So when the environmental movements are taken as an example of the movement groups, here you don't have any specific leader. We have hundreds of leaders, hundreds of movements going on around the world, and it will be a continuous movement until the entire world is being clean and green. This was not so easy to happen. So in this way we can say that movement should be specific and also time bound, so the pressure would be mounting on the governments. So is the pressure or the influence which is falling on the politics, is it healthy? Is the pressure group movements influence on politics, is it healthy, or how do they actually influence the political scenario of a particular nation or a state or a region? It's very simple. They first of all they try to gain the public support in a larger scale. So first they try to gain public support. After they gain the public support, now they want it to be a larger movement, where once the public support is clear, they now would like to organize certain protests against the moves of the government. So they would resort themselves to go towards the strikes. So they would like to gain the public support, or they would like to go for strikes, and some of the business groups or the business tycoons appoint a particular section of people called a lobbyist, a professional lobbyist with the government, with the political parties to get their benefits done. We have many large business tycoons like the Tata groups, the Reliance groups, the Adani groups. These all groups would definitely have professional lobbyists to talk the issue or to take the issue to the notice of the government. So the influence on the politics may also have particular issues like lobbyist group, and sometimes most of the movements it can be supported by the political parties. We don't know. Actually political parties may be heading them, may be fueling them, may be supplying man, material and everything for them in order to organize them. That is one case where political parties support them. At the same time, the same group of people may also end up by turning into a political party. For that, we have an example like The Students' Union Federation, which fought against the foreigners in Assam, turned into an establishment of a political party called Assam Gana Parishad, AGP. In the same way, we also have in the South Indian states, one of the states like Tamil Nadu, where in Tamil Nadu, the struggle of the backward classes towards the domination of the caste hierarchy in the society or to fight against the social injustice. We have two political parties coming up of this momentum, that is DMK and AIADMK. So, it would be very easy to conclude that the moments which are happening would generally have a specific issue based, and most of the times they are less time bound, but as the time passes on, the issues may become into larger side with various other perspectives also. The influence on politics. So how are the movements influencing the political scenario? First of all, they would like to gain the public support. Secondly, they would like to have or conduct strikes in order to grab the attention of the public and the government. They would also have some lobbyist group to make these ideas clear to the government and pass it as a via through channel to make their ideas clear to them and to get their ideas back. Political parties would also like to support some of the organizations in a hidden manner. We also have some political parties turning back, the organization groups turning back and ending up into formation of a political party. Like for example, the Students' Union Federation fought against the foreigners in Assam, which have turned up into Assam Gana Parishad. And we also have the backward classes party struggle or backward caste people struggling against the social injustice in Tamil Nadu, where DMK and ANDK are closely associated with that struggles. So like this, we can say yes, they do influence the political parties, politics and the government influences. So we have discussed about the different categories of the pressure groups which are influencing the government. Now the fundamental question is the influence really healthy in a democratic setup? This is a question which has to be addressed very clearly. Is the influence healthy? Is the influence in democracy is really healthy of a particular section of people, particular group of people? In democracy, all sections of people's interest, all sections of people's interest, all sections of people's interest is important. So when I say all sections of people's interest is important, I made it very clear from my side that in a democratic setup, we need to have the say of everybody to be heard clearly also. But what is the negativity when it comes to the pressure groups' influence on them? Pressure groups do not want to take the responsibility of anything but would like to wield the power. The point is, they are having no responsibility. They are having no responsibility but would like to take a share in the power. So how can you say that they are not having any responsibility but they would like to have a share on the power? See, when you ask a section or when you do a movement which is pressurizing the government to take a policy in the favor of you, you are directly saying to the government that you are forced to do this one because we are doing a movement. But at the same time, these pressure groups do not go for elections. So the pressure groups have no elections. But when it comes to political parties, The political parties would go for elections in a term wise where they are accountable to the people, they are answerable to the people. If they don't perform well in this term, they can be removed in the next term. That is the right to vote which is given to the people to judge the work of the political party. This kind of structure is not there for the movement groups or the pressure groups. So, we have to be very cautious when the government is taking any kind of decisions in the favor of the particular sections of the people. And the next one is, the pressure groups do not have any funds. The political parties do obviously have funds for them which are given by the people or by the political supporting organizations like the corporate groups or the different other groups, but when it comes to pressure groups, we don't have that many sources of income for them to fight on a very larger scale. And at the same time, yes, I am getting back to your point where the pressure or influence, the pressure in democracy is truly healthy. Sometimes it really gets influenced by certain small section of people like rich people, corporate people, section of people, but obviously it is true to say that democracy gets under the influence of somebody, but when certain movement has been raised in the favor of the particular section of people to do a favoritism for them and pressurizing the government, obviously we would have a counter movement stepping up, asking them to stop this kind of favors doing to that one. So this kind of favor and counter movements would obviously are necessary in democracy, and in democratic setup we obviously believe that the government has to hear or listen to all the movements and finally decide and accommodate the conflicting interests. For example, if it is really required, government has to take a strong stand and do its work to do the benefit of the sections of people, but not at the cost of benefit of the other sections of people. When I talked about the Narmada Bachao Andolan as an example here, Narmada Bachao Andolan was the dam, Sardar Sarovar Dam. It was not to stop the dam, but it was to accommodate the interests of the people, those are losing their lands because of the construction of the dam. Later on it took to the other phases. So in the same way, when the democracy is being doing any favor for any particular sections of people because of the momentum which is gained of the pressure group or the moment group, but it should not be at the benefits which are not given to that particular sections of people, but all are grabbed and given to this section of people. Yes, in democracy, we strongly believe that all people have the same voice and should be given chance to be heard with the same intensity and everything. And government should try to do the benefits for all people with an equal perspective. That's all we have in this lesson.